Hi, everyone. I'm Chrissy Rutherford. I'm a digital creator, writer, and founder of the Forward Joy newsletter. I'm so honored to be here today with all of you and to guide this conversation on conscious leadership. To me, conscious leadership means leading with purpose, authenticity, mindfulness, and grounded in a profound commitment to ethical responsibility. And these two incredible women on stage with me truly embody these values. And I'm so thrilled to introduce them today as today's panelists. And sadly, we're missing Stephanie, but starting with Gaby, is the Vice President of Environmental Services at Cultivo, where she leads product and design for Cultivo Land PBC, a Series A startup focusing on scaling investment into nature. Cultivo's mission is ambitious to regenerate 1% of the world's land into healthy ecosystems by 2030. Previously, she held leadership roles at the Obama Foundation, Squarespace, right? Yes, and Twitter, where she was known for building resilient teams and developing impactful products from scratch. And then we have Anna. She is the head of sustainability and commodities specialist at Bloomberg, where she leads initiatives in sustainable finance through solutions designed with scientific rigor and user-focused innovation. Anna is recognized for her skill in bridging technical and human elements to drive meaningful impact in finance. Her ability to communicate complex sustainability topics effectively have positioned her as a respected leader in ESG investing. Welcome, ladies. So we're going to start off, just to get us all on a baseline, what does it mean to you to be a conscious leader?
I'll get started, sure. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for the organizers for putting this panel together. So for me, being a values-based conscious leader is really all about the attributes that you called out. Leading intentionally, leading with purpose, leading with high regard and esteem for the people and teams that one is helping usher towards common goals, and doing so in a way that is, I love the term servant leadership, but in a way that really fulfills goals and does so in a way that is transparent, in a way that is society positive, and in a way that is deeply humane. I think that those attributes are applicable across industries, and whether one is working in technology or big tech, as I used to, or in the sustainability, climate space, or any other area, really it all for me centers around what problem are we here to solve, and how can we solve it together?
Thank you. For me, when I think about leadership and then conscious leadership, I think about, first of all, understanding the whole elements, the whole ecosystem. Why do you want to become a leader? I think through my career, I experienced being a manager, being a leader, to know now, experience the difference. Now, when you get to be not only a manager, but also a leader, you get to understand that you're dealing with people. So most of your skills have to be people skills. You have to understand, you have to listen, you have to guide, you have to be silent, and you have to apply so many skills that usually you learn through your life, not even at school. You learn through your life, through mentorship, through people, through others. And ultimately being a conscious leader means that you know yourself, you know your strengths, and you know your weaknesses. So you can apply that to a group and lead them and help them accomplish potential, accomplish a goal, but also let them know their own path. And I think to me that means a conscious leader.
Great answers. Okay, Gaby, you've had the opportunity to build teams and initiatives from scratch. How have you integrated your personal values in your leadership philosophy while creating and steering these teams and initiatives?
Yeah, happy to answer that question, and feel free to chime in at any point. We can sort of build off each other's answers. But yeah, so I've had the great fortune of building a lot of 0 to 1 initiatives. I love, and I'm like incredibly passionate about solving hard problems, and I love that ebullient, face when a problem is really ambiguous. Some people don't like it. Really ambiguous, really hard, and you're like, where do I even begin? I was sort of well known since my time at Twitter for loving those hard moments, and that sort of became my niche. And I've had the great fortune again of starting a lot of products and eventually ventures within Twitter, at Squarespace, where I was leading new product development, and at the Obama Foundation, where I started the first digital team for the president's post-presidency chapter, which was perhaps the greatest honor of my career so far. So anyway, throughout all of, and doing the same right now at Cultivo. One of the cool things about starting things from where nothing exists is that one gets to design with a lot of intentionality, not only who you're going to be working with, but what are the processes, what are the structures, what is the governance, what are the goals, what are the frameworks that you are going to be putting in place to make sure that you are effectively leading towards a common goal. I don't say this to be like a process person. I'm very much not. I believe that there are different sets of right process heft for different types of organizational sizes. But I would say there's a few common things that I've found to be really key in creating products, creating teams that are that work well. One is really having a very clear North Star of what it is that you are trying to do, where is it that you are together trying to head, and then coupling that with a lot of autonomy so that folks have a clear understanding of what it is that unites us, that unifies us, what is the common goal, but then really empowering teams to find their own path towards that North Star. I think that that's a tactic that I try to use always. Make sure that you are driving a clear understanding of what it is that we're here to do, and then lead with really empowering practices for the experts that you're bringing along on the ride. Two, I really believe, and this is perhaps from my techie bias, but I love the Moro bias towards action. When problems are really complex, it can be paralyzing at times to know, where do I begin, right? Certainly many aspects of the conversations that I have been having here today, at times the challenge seems insurmountable, or the efforts really Sisyphean, right? So what I encourage teams to do, and I think that it's a deeply held personal value, is to start and put one foot in front of the other, and to experiment and learn. To create room for failure is really critical, because it is failure that teaches us to eventually find our way. For those that are into technology, especially if they're into 0 to 1 product development, you're just like, your team is as good as how fast it is learning. So making sure that people have the psychological safety, and knowing that their action is going to be, met with encouragement, is something that I think is really key to have as a leader. That is coupled in my mind with the criticality of, our positions in making sure that we are favoring impact as opposed to the theatrics of work, right? Making it clear that what we're here to do is to create impact, not optics, not whatever else might be the case, but really to keep people really centered on moving the needle towards the goals that we're trying to have. And I think this is certainly critical for the work that I'm doing at Cultivo right now, where nature-based solutions is a complex and many-faceted space. The last thing I might end with is, sort of this refrain of really having it all be centered on people. One of the things that I like to do as soon as I start a team is to create a very clear team charter and a very clear list of norms and what are like the cultures and values that unify us as a team. Certainly very critical for remote-first teams, but also transnational teams, teams of any size. What are the ways in which we're going to be relating with each other? And through those norms, you can help surface the critical things about what make us human. I think time and again, it is proven to me that focusing on investments that unlock individual potential is paid off in spades. That's not only the right thing to do, but it's the right thing for the business, is the right thing for the team, is the right thing for retention, is the right for many other facets. Just really creating a space that accommodates people's potential and accommodates their full humanity. Yeah.
And if I can build on the top of that, I think building is such a great skill. I've been working with the development of solutions, call it data, call it platforms, in different organizations that I have worked with. And I kept thinking, is the process that I built 15 years ago still running? And maybe it is, because no one has decommissioned it. And this is an important question, because do you think about the waste you leave behind with things you start that you didn't end, or that no one thinks about? So think about the period, like the period of time that things that a process, a product, or that a company lives. There's a beginning and there's an end to it, and we need to be better identifying those opportunities when we build them. Because if we have to maintain something, that's a management role, right? I keep coming back to differentiating between being a manager, between being a leader. You can always maintain, you can always keep, you can decommission, you can, slice the process in order to make it effective. But the value of creating something new that is needed in the market, that is gonna solve for a period of time that is needed, and it's gonna end without no waste, not even for companies that produce physical assets are critical, but for companies that are creating data, like the ones that I have been, or that create services that may no longer be useful, but we are creating waste in that period. So I think that becomes a problem that we as a society need to solve for, and in the way that we build products and services for the rest of us. I think whenever you are able to utilize that capacity in the analysis, research, product, or services that you put out there, you will be recognized as a leader, because you're solving something that is greater than you, that it translates into something society needs. And I think that's important.
I know. It's interesting to hear you guys talk about problem solving, and it's making me think about how that is so integral to being a leader and how important it is. And like some people don't like to solve problems, or, that's not always a skill set that everybody has. And, I'm from a completely different industry. I've been in the publishing world I was in publishing for over a decade. So problem solving was also something that was so like integral to my role as an editor, because you could never tell someone that like, oh, this isn't an option. You need to come with plan A, plan B, plan C, and, really figure out how to solve all the issues. So I really like the points that you guys made about that. Now, Anna, you were very intentional about pursuing a leadership position the moment you felt ready for it, but it wasn't a completely straightforward process. Can you talk to us about how you advocated for yourself and successfully persuaded others of the value that you bring to a company?
Absolutely. And for the sake of simplifying, I've been in several companies and have moved actually relocated several times. I'm originally from Mexico, but I've been living in the U.S. for the last 8 years and have worked through different teams, like product teams, data teams, development, technology teams, but also now more closely like in a consultative type of role, working closer with clients. So I think through that exposure, I have gained perspective. And that perspective have made me realize of what are the aspects that I love about my career. I think the moment that you're ready is not that, oh, I have a checklist, I have all skills that I needed, I have all the courses that I have to, and the people that I want to recognize me as a leader there. I don't think it's that way. I think, first of all, I like to start saying, like, I became a leader because I wanted it. So I became very intentional about the fact that I know in the past I have been a successful individual contributor, and I have been a successful manager or a leader as well. So what do I choose? Where do I choose my career to be, and where I think I'm going to be most effective? So everything starts with intentionality. That's what I desire to. It's not straightforward. It doesn't happen overnight, not because I want to be the goalkeeper or win the game, I'm going to do it. I think it gets to know the path, and it gets to know the fact that do you know the business? Do you know where are you entering? Do you know the dough that you have to work with? And for that, I'll come to the second skill, which is problem solving. It's not, I mean, you can envision yourself to be managing a problem. Is that where you think are you most useful? I think if you're able to identify a place or an opportunity where there's a problem to solve, or where there's value to be added, but no one is willing because it's not part of their job description, it's not part of the role, it's not something I'm carrying, then you have an opportunity. And if you're willing enough to try to solve it and to bring the pieces together, then you go into my third point, which is finding people that resonate with you, people that value your point of view, and people that will, I would say, will speak about you, but not because they think you're good, but because you showed them there's a way to solve that problem, and they believe in you. And hence, they will trust your business in your hands. And I think that's how you start advocating. It's not about, I am great. It's about, how can we collaborate each other to solve for this problem that I know I'm capable to solve for. I would say that that's how I started, and there's many ways to do it, but I think it starts with, are you intentional with your objective? Do you know what you need to solve? And do you have the right people by your side?
That also makes me think about imposter syndrome, which I have complicated feelings around that term, but I'm curious if that is something that you've experienced through your career trajectory, especially considering that you're not American, but you've obviously been here for 8 years and building quite a career for yourself.
Yes, and I can also get some help of it. I would say yes. Imposter syndrome, it's a fact that I would say it's limited to women. I think everyone can face it. I have particular examples. Even though I've been living in the US for 8 years, I have been working with American companies or in an English-speaking language for the past probably 15, 20 years. But I was studied and raised with Spanish as my major language. And this is a funny story, right? So when I transitioned into working in an American English environment, I had to write a lot of research and a lot of notes to clients about things that happened. And it was very interesting that every time that I read it, I think it, and then I write it. And all the feedback that I got back in the time was, oh, it's because you're not an American native, so you have to improve it, right? So those moments were the ones that someone highlight a weakness or a difference. Right. And 15 years ago, it was a huge thing not fitting in. I think nowadays, when you have a particularity, you can make it seen as a value. Back then, it was a different story. And I think those moments were the moments where you realize, oh, I'm different. I cannot provide the same value. And you realize that I need to do more to compensate that. And I think that imposter syndrome play a lot. But then I think if you're able to make peace with it and say, you're right, I'm not an American, but I can provide another view that new clients will now value in another perspective. Now we also have technology for that. I think you can become resourceful, first of all, by understanding yourself, where are my weaknesses, there are elements that I can use to overcome it, and obviously preserve your authenticity. What makes me valuable that others can't, so I can not think about what I don't have, but actually what I have. Do you want to?
Do you have anything to add?
perhaps it's a personality flaw, but I don't think I've experienced imposter syndrome per se. But I have worked with a lot of, especially women, who have, and tried to support them through it. But I think that there is, what I've experienced is throughout my career, just like a profound loneliness in many ways. And some of those elements are based on my identity. I too am an immigrant. I came to the U.S. for college in 2004 and remained. I'm originally from Peru, though grew up all over Latin America. My career, which has been in big tech or New York tech or now climate tech, and a chapter in civic tech. Perhaps the Obama Foundation chapter was like an outlier. It was not representative. But, I've been the only woman in floors. Like, I used to be the only woman to use the restroom at the Twitter New York City office when we started, right? Like, I for many times in my career, I didn't have the luxury to even think about being the only Latina, because like, I was the only woman. Got to start somewhere. And I've at every single organization I've been at, I've started the Latino employee resource. With the exception of Cultivo, there's a lot of the founder is Mexican, so there's almost like no need for it. We're still small. But I've always been like the highest ranking, I heard that term, like Latina leader, right? Which is lonely. So I think, if anything, that's what I've experienced. Just not feeling like I was actually understood, or that there was space to talk in earnest about problems, or in earnest about it, or often being the only person that staff of different kinds would feel comfortable raising certain issues to, and then feeling that it was very much my duty and responsibility to advocate for certain policy changes or whatever might be the case alongside others. So I think, if anything, that's been my experience. I wish I could say that it has changed. I think that there was a period of time in technology where it really seemed like the tides were turning, and there's just been a huge backlash.
I think, when it comes to imposter syndrome, I would say it's not something that I experienced in my career in corporate America, but as much as I felt like I deserved to be there, I think when it came time to like negotiating for more money or a bigger salary, it's then, you're kind of put in a different headspace where you're like, can I really get this?
Yeah.
Like, am I really deserving of this? And, just being put in a position where you really do have to like advocate for yourself. And, you got to come with like the rap sheet of everything that you've done. So that's why, your story made me think about that, because you've clearly been very pointed about wanting to move up in your career.
It resonates. One thing that probably is other folks here in the group can relate to, at this point that you brought up on salary negotiations, is so on point. When I used to work in tech, it was with the aid of an H-1B visa. That means that my employer is the reason I'm able to legally work in the country. So for a long time, if someone said, you got a promotion, I would be like, thank you. It's not that I have a lot of choice. The first thing I did when I got my green card was quit and work and go serve the Obamas, because finally I had freedom. But that does resonate a lot. Like, I think, as being an immigrant, maybe this resonates too, but there's a sense of like, okay, thank you. and not necessarily feeling
you should just
like,
be
okay,
grateful for
more.
like what you have.
Exactly.
And
Which
not
I don't
for more.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, agree. I don't like that at all. Let's talk about mentorship, 'cause obviously that is so important, and community are crucial for empowering the next generation of women leaders. How have mentors or supportive networks influenced your own path, and how do you now advocate or mentor women who are coming up in your field behind you? Start, Anna.
Long question, but resuming to it needs to be done, right? I think through my career, I think it's several ways. I haven't had one single mentor and one single sponsor helping me through my career. I think it has been individual contributors helping me in their roles. Sometimes you'll find those mentors can be your managers or your leaders. I think that's a good opportunity for yourself because it's easy. You're aligned with their objective, and if you find that value alignment, it's just going to be easier for your career. Sometimes you'll find that not your colleagues, but within your company, you'll find that. But also, it's important to recognize what are the values that to you are the most important to recognize on those leaders and find that community. Sometimes will be within your company, will be within your industry. Having women and sustainability groups are huge, which have not existed for a long time, and it hasn't been easy to find those who think in the same objectives that we do, right? I also think that ability to communicate with those people, it's important. It's people at the end who you are trying to connect with, being your mentors. I've been in different positions. I have get mentorship. I have done, if you know the concept of reverse mentorship, I have conducted reverse mentorship with a senior leader at one firm where that person I was a mentor, that person was a mentee, and it's a really good dynamic because you get to know it yourself as someone that can bring wisdom to a person that it's very recognized in the industry, but at the same time, maybe has lost its passion. Right. And they can use that passion in you, and you can use reverse wisdom in a very, very strategic way.
That's so cool. I love that.
It was, to me, a very, very good exercise to understand you, right? You think you are so valuable at a level, but it's only because you haven't been exposed to the next level. And that opportunity to create meaningful relationship is important. And I would say third and most important, it's about being authentic about those relationships. You won't be liking everyone you meet, and not because that's the most recognized person in the industry, you're gonna like that person because of the values. So I would say in that term, it doesn't need to be, you don't need to connect with everyone. You need to make sure that whoever you connect, you respect in a way, right? Maybe for you, a value is not as important as for them, but you respect that. But the minute that there's not that respect, you should not be part of that community, or you should not be part of that. I think finding the right mentors or being part of the right mentorship groups, it's important. And don't think that because you're at a certain level, you cannot mentor everyone. There's always an opportunity to mentor someone and to bring back that wisdom that you have learned through your school, through internships, through work, or even through a community, which I believe more and more are important these days.
So I love the verb mentor, but I don't love it as a noun. I much prefer the concept of a sponsor. A sponsor is someone that will put like skin in the line for you. Yeah. So in general, I say don't find a mentor, find a sponsor. I think mentorship for me, especially in the vein of like mentorship programs or whatever else, can feel transactional and not like deep enough. But sponsors, which is what I try to do, is people that will actively advocate, get in, like, and at times these are managers, but oftentimes this can be people other than managers that will actually deliver dramatic step change improvement for your career, right? So I always encourage people, be a sponsor, find a sponsor. For me, I think that the most significant mentors were those people that I will actually qualify as sponsors. Not the people that will just talk to me about what they do, like, once a Blue Moon. I think I sort of checked out of that way of doing mentorship because it just wasn't significant enough. And at some point, I had my own mentoring responsibilities. Yeah. I think another thing that goes in the sort of perhaps category of mentorship, but that I also recommend people take on is the concept of a personal career, like a board of directors. Can you have trusted peers, former managers, people you work with, or whatever else, that can be deeply invested in you and your career and your goals? And, set up check-ins with each one of them. This might be a little bit awkward, but maybe even like call for a gathering of everybody if you're about to make a big decision. It is having those long-term relationships with sounding boards that understand who you are as a professional and as a human. Those are the structures that I feel are actually, really net positive.
Yeah.
And if I can
go.
just add that, I agree what you said, but sometimes those mentors, not every mentor will be a sponsor, but sometimes those mentors will become your sponsors. It's difficult, I think, because I think finding that person is not something, I mean, you are intentional about finding them, but not because you're intentional, you're gonna find them. But you have to explore where those relationships can occur. But as soon as you detect, oh, this is not gonna move from being a mentorship to sponsorship, I mean, you don't have to kill the relationship. What I'm saying is like you can keep a mentorship for the sake of having a mentorship if it adds value, but you can identify early on which ones can become sponsors and dedicate more time towards those relationships. So I think aside of being intentional and looking, once you identify them, being intentional about keeping and maintaining those relationships for the framework that you want them, it becomes also very important.
Yeah, I know, Gabby, I liked what you said about like having a circle of people, because I've been pitching this to people that I know, because I now work for myself, and as a creative, it's very hard to like work in a silo, and especially because I spent so many years working on teams where you have brainstorms and you get to like build something with a team of people, and I feel like it can just be really isolating when you're by yourself. So I'm trying to get a few creative friends where we can kind of have like our own little pitch circles or be accountable to one another. Like when we have an idea that we're going to execute it. And even if it's, obviously like not on a mentorship level, but just having that support group. But I think, there's also like a lot of misconceptions around like how you find a mentor, because I think oftentimes people think like, you're just supposed to walk up to someone that's inspiring to you and ask them, can you be my mentor? But I think the best relationships actually just happen very organically, and it's usually people that you are in like community with or in the same office. And obviously it can be tricky when you're first starting out, but it's like you kind of have to find someone who's going to take an interest in watching you grow, right? Yeah. And I think that's, such an important factor. And yeah, I think when I was working in corporate jobs, it was like my managers were usually, I saw also as mentors to me. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think being very explicit, especially with managers, I feel on like, what are the areas of growth? What are your identified areas of, what are the next things you want to be true in your career? And setting up those conversations. Ideally, you have a manager that, has talked to you about an individual development plan and all of those different things. But if you don't, being proactive about eliciting that level of feedback, guidance, and support, I feel like can definitely pay off.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to identify those roles, right? Not always a manager can be a sponsor or a mentor, because they do, like a manager will have an objective, a team objective, which not necessarily will be your career development. But sometimes you get a manager that can be a coach and at the same time be interested in your growth, even if it's in your team or another team. So I think you as you are advocating for your own career, have to identify who are those critical people that can help you and deliver, right? You always have to deliver to your manager, but to those relationships that you are committing to. It's not only for the, I would say, it's not only for the sake of you building those relationships that that person will be sponsored, but usually there's something at the end for those people too. I found examples in my career where people will be or want to be intentional about inclusion or diversity, but they say it in words, but they don't know what it means. And I have found people that naturally they just do it. They don't say, I want to do it. You see them picking and selecting and making the change. So identifying those behaviors are quite important as setting them and putting them in practice in your careers.
And that is the perfect segue to my next question, because conscious leadership obviously has the potential to drive diversity and inclusion within organizations. How have you used your leadership role to champion these values?
I'll kick things off. So as I mentioned, when starting things from scratch, one gets the opportunity to create kind of the world that you want to see. I'll name as an example my team at the Obama Foundation. When I started, I was the only person. When I left, it was close to 40 people, which in civic tech is not common. And the team was 98% like I don't even know the terminology these days, but an underrepresented minority group in technology. And I was extremely proud of that fact. We didn't go out looking for, people of a particular profile. We didn't necessarily narrow who we were interviewing. It just naturally happened, maybe by way of like the name that we had in the door, or also the type of culture that was palpable for people to see as part of the interview process. But I basically tried to instill in the early stages of that team everything I believed would work in creating an inclusive, psychologically safe, highly resilient, highly diverse team. Basically, everything that I had seen done wrong, I wanted to do the opposite, and I wanted to apply those lessons in the formulation of the team. How we hire, how we progress people across clear career ladders, how do we offer compensation, how do we offer learning opportunities, how do we advance people through individual development plans, how do we work together, what problems do we focus on solving. All of those facets are within the purview of a leader to help shape, determine, or to set a structure to help sort of like satisfy and advance. To more directly answer the question, I think one has great authorship as a leader to be able to see, to create the change that you want to see in the world. But one needs to do it, right? Yeah. And at times that isn't easy. At times you will trade, some clout in order to defend a certain thing that you think is right. And I think it's all about, just continuing with that, like, clarity on, like, what it is, the truth that you want to be clear. How do you make sure that you bring other people along in the journey? And how do you prove out the value that, sort of like a diverse team with multiple perspectives can provide, right? In our case, that's something that we did routinely at the Obama Foundation. The team that we built, this highly diverse, team made up of mostly unrepresented minorities in technology, had the highest like retention of every other team across the organization. By every measure of engagement, they were much more engaged. By every measure of throughput and sort of like organizational ability to deliver, they were delivering. Yeah. I'm excited to into whatever degree I have the possibility to do that, to continue to expand that playbook. That said, not every organization is as receptive, and one needs to choose battles.
For sure.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, I will say that early in my career, when I started, I thought about like performance. So as an individual contributor, I thought like if you do your best, you will always be recognized. And you don't realize of the value and the challenge of diversity and inclusion until you become a minority. So in one of my many changes, I realized, and this was actually highlighted by my mentee on my reverse mentorship, that, oh, you realize that you are a woman in technology who is also a mother. And I'm like, oh, wow, yes, I'm a minority. And that represents many different challenges. And when you start thinking as a minority, you realize how hard sometimes it's bringing your voice up. In the past, I was mentioning it years ago, most of people try to fit in into a group. You try to create groups that were very similar because you thought that that means groups will be successful or will bring the same level of performance into the metrics. I think that nowadays it's about being the leader who can create those diverse groups to bring a different performance. And it's not about going to the final line faster. It may be about bringing impact, and you as a leader being able to raise the voice for the minorities makes a huge impact into not only your team, but the organization, because you're bringing perspective. Also, your clients are being more diverse now, so they can understand better. It's also about identifying what is the value of diversity, right? And I always like to clarify that diversity and inclusion are different. Diversity is finding that there's different points of view, right? So let's say you have solved for diversity. That's great. Is that making a difference? Is that actually people are actually being included in those decision makings, or are you still taking those decisions based on the majority, which are not the diverse group? So I think practicing it, it's way harder than just thinking it. And until you become a minority, you won't realize it. Something that I also do is that I don't press a hard agenda of diversity and inclusion in every discussion that I have, but when someone is receptive about those topics, if they don't know how to apply it, I try to highlight the problems for those particular groups, saying, oh, so if you only think about this world where there's a certain representation, you're going to exclude, I don't know, half of the population, or you're going to exclude these problems. So I always try to bring that perspective in, even if it's taken or not. For me, it's take it or leave it, but I'm highlighting that as a risk that you need to incorporate in the decision making that you will be including.
Absolutely. All right, we only have a few minutes left. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for the panelists?
Thank you very much for the interesting discussion and insights. I really appreciated what you said about finding a sponsor or finding a trusted mentor, basically, who can help you but also stand in for your name. And I was wondering, how do you approach potential sponsors? And how do you kind of build a lasting relationship? Like, because I've experienced several cases where people have helped me, and I find it difficult to kind of follow up with them and kind of add value to their career or to their being as well.
I'll venture an answer, and I guess there's no playbook. I like your reference to just leading with authenticity, and remembering that, like, it's not transactional. It's not quid pro quo. Like you help me, so I must help you, or like I don't know. I feel like having a notion of like, okay, what do you want to learn? What do you want to grow in? And then identifying contextually, like, who might be best suited for that. And then just starting like a conversation, a dialogue, or deepening an existing dialogue and connection is probably the best way to go about it. And being forthcoming about the challenges that you're facing that are being a blocker to you being able to get to where you want to go. To name an example, I feel like my first real sponsor was this guy who's awesome. Is now like a CPO at the Harvard thing. Anyway, I had been doing the work of product for, I think, 18 months at that point. But this was back in the day when Twitter, Facebook, Google, for you to be a product person, you needed to have a computer science degree, have a government degree, which I'm very proud of. But you had to have a computer science degree and be of these feeder schools, right? I can't believe that world existed, but that was the world that existed. As a result, like the idea where right now you can come up in product and be from a completely different team was just not a thing. But he built a case, put his own sort of like skin in the game of why I was the best person to do this job. And in fact, I was already doing this. And I think that one thing that you mentioned is very germane here. But this idea of like doing the work, being proactive about identifying a problem, and so that you make your case almost undeniable, I think is a critical sort of element. In terms of like making sure that you then convert that into a lasting relationship, I'll admit I'm terrible at networking. I'm like really bad at like long-term lasting relationships if they don't feel authentic to me. So I think the way that I've framed this in my mind is that the people who are not, I'm terrible at this, so I'm probably the worst person to give you an example, try to be an example. But for me, I don't maintain relationships just for professional or career gain. Like for me, there needs to be an extra depth to that, right? Like, are we pursuing the same interests? Are we pursuing the same goals? Like, do I like you as a human? Like, did we really connect at a level that was deeper than just work? Those are the relationships that I think can be long-lasting, and maybe other people have other, are just better and less networking allergic than I am. But I feel like those are that's my personal board of directors, right? Those are the people that I keep in touch with and will tell me, like, no, that choice that you're making is dumb. Like I really trust that above any other sort of like level of expertise.
Yeah, I will say be cautious. You don't have to give away all your life and all your story to a person to like that person. I think, and I'm also not like great at networking, but I've been listening to find people that I resonate with, that we can keep a relationship towards the years. I think of yourself in that relationship. Like if you were the other person, what would you expect? You don't expect someone to keep you updated every month with things that are happening, but you may expect someone that, I moved from a job like since 5 years ago and now I'm heading here. Thank you so much for helping me get in there because you were valuable. I think people will appreciate that, particularly if they help you. And the other way around, you don't know what that person is in that relation with you. Maybe it's because they truly believe in diversity or inclusion and they want to see that impact in a way. So you're giving them back that joy that you applied what they told you. Now, we always sometimes look sponsors or mentors in people that we don't know but we admire. But sometimes people that know you, that are already near you, they can give you better examples. I mean, just give you an idea that I know myself can I do this? And people that know you will tell you, actually, you can do that. What are you hesitating about? And that's something that sometimes is not like a longing relation, like it's not a mentorship, but that can be valuable to your actions in the day-to-day.
I'll also add, I think not every mentorship, like not every mentor is going to take you through your entire career. And I think it's really hard when you're starting out because you really don't have much to offer, someone who you're looking up to who might be more established in their career. I think Anna gave really great examples of how to kind of approach someone, like when you're emailing them and being like, I'm trying to figure out if this is the right move. I really admire the steps that you've taken in your career. And so, I'm coming to you for this. And then sometimes, you just have to not worry so much about bugging them, and you follow up with them every few months or whatnot, and let them know this is what I'm up to. I really appreciate, again, the guidance you've given me, and just see who you feel actually might take an interest in your personal growth and your career growth.
One last thing I might add on this is just take the shot, and then don't take it personally if it doesn't land.
Yes.
One thing that especially being in the mentor position now a lot is I have 2 kids who are running around naked while I'm trying to deliver the deck for a pitch for a round, and maybe I miss your email. I even though I so care about this, I will eventually follow up, or maybe in certain cases I've had people not follow up with me, and that's just the recognition again that in the people in their full humanity, people are just busy, and maybe that's just that, right? I definitely recommend just taking the shot, follow up, and if it doesn't land,
Right.
it doesn't land.
Yeah.
It's not you. It's them. Yeah. It feels like I'm in a bad rom-com.
No.
But
no, it's so true. Yeah, I think you shouldn't be afraid to follow up, but if you've emailed someone 2-3 times max and you don't hear back, then you move on to the next.
When I used to be starting up, I would take it very personally. Why didn't you reply, or whatever else? And then
so hard not to.
It's no, it's not you. Yeah.
Oh, no, you're good. I'll pass it over later. Well, thank you all for sharing your experiences with us today. I have a question for Gaby, actually. I'm also from Peru, and I was wondering, throughout your career, have you led any projects in Peru, and how have you balanced being a professional in both the US and Peru? I'd love to hear how you've connected the work you do in the US with initiatives back home.
I love that. Great to see a fellow compatriot. Especially earlier on in my career, I very much tried to stay in touch with the National Institute of Engineering, with the Council of Technology, with certain startups that were working in the spaces of education, entrepreneurship, Y Combinator, let's propel dynamism in the tech industry in Peru. I will confess that has not been an area of focus in, I would say, even the last 5 years, where just my role became so that it was just harder to stay connected. One of the things that I really lament about my career is that I've loved the opportunities I've had in technology, but tech is so US-centric. I mean, there are hubs that are emerging in many different places, but once I happened upon this career in tech, it was just really hard to go elsewhere and do the job. And there was a hope for a little bit while the pandemic happened, but now we're sort of all back to in office or hubs or certain things like that. And it is part of my personal projects to just get connected back to the ecosystem in Peru. I know some other people do this, but I didn't necessarily focus on having a profile or a name in Peru, though I had the opportunity to do it. It's just not who I am. That's not my personality. But where I've tried to focus and rekindle my involvement in the community is by angel investing. That's sort of my own way of like trying to support really great innovators and entrepreneurs from the region. And I'm hopeful to sort of deepen things in that way. And then, you can sort of play, the role of advocate, of mentor, and then actually provide capital for, an organization that might otherwise not happen. Let me know if that sort of satisfies the answer, but I wish I could provide a much more updated perspective. I'll say my daughter is a Peruvian citizen, a dual citizen. I'm a dual citizen at this point. And I'm about to go to the consulate next week to register my son. We're excited about spending more time in Peru and take advantage of whatever flexibility we have with work right now. But damn, do I wish that there was just like, it's starting in Colombia, it's starting in Brazil, it's starting in Mexico for sure, but I don't think that tech is as established in Peru as it could be.
Hi, I'm very sorry again for interrupting you. My question was, we talked a little bit about salary negotiations. I think you're both very successful, very advocating for yourselves. How do you confront a situation in which your manager tells you, we don't have the space for this promotion, we don't have the budget? I guess maybe just more practical hands-on advice for negotiating your salary as someone in a space where you are a minority and you have to speak even louder for yourself.
Absolutely. I think I faced both. Having wanting a promotion. I mean, I've got many through the years, but I remember particularly one that I wanted that didn't happen in a year, in a 2-year, and in the 3rd year. And it was very interesting because at that point you realize, why do I want this promotion? Why do I want to get there? Is it valuable? If I get promoted to manage that team, I mean, I wanted it, but I'm going to be in a position that I'm going to represent something that I don't want. So am I wanting the promotion because I want it to be for my ego or even for my career advancement? I'm working towards something that I want to represent. But is that the end of it? Is that the group, and to get there, is the group that has to approve me something that I resonate with? That was a lesson that I learned on leadership. Even if you know where you want to get, does it reflect the career that you want to have? What I've done is that I promoted myself in other roles. I moved laterally, moved forward, and moved different, and now I'm probably 2 steps ahead of the position that I actually wanted it. But then I had to think of myself, is this where I wanted to be evaluated, or want to be demonstrate my leadership? And at the end, I ended up thinking, this is not the way. I need to change to a place where the things that matter are the things that I'm representing. At the end, I think you're not 2 different people. The person that you are at home or in your personal life is the same person that goes to work and work with. So if there is a misalignment in values, you're going to reflect that in not having the promotion you want or not having the salary negotiation that you want. The other aspect of it, not with promotion, but with salary, is that you have to believe you should earn that money. First of all, you don't have to have a conflict between money and not feeling that it's not a feeling. It's basically like there's data now. Early in my career, there was no data to say, do I get that money or not? But nowadays you have like Glassdoor, you have a lot of like LinkedIn salaries, so you have a good range to understand like the data between the range you're looking for. I would say don't be afraid and use that data to reflect the money that you want. Also, like HR companies nowadays have better systems to understand whether a person have been late has been not moving the salary because of the years, to identify those gaps. And if those are not running in your company, you can go with HR and say, are you running those analysis? Am I better paid off in the market? So I think going back to what Gaby was saying is like, don't take it personal. Think about the data to support that you deserve that money, and it's not a feeling, it's like that's the money that I get because of the work and duties that I'm performing.
I think it's hard in startups, right? In bigger organizations, it's easier to deploy some of these tactics. But in smaller teams, startups, this is less sort of like what I've done myself, but what I've done for others. I think data is key. I completely second that. Like coming equipped with based on my research, and I'm happy to help anybody in this room with research on, overall just what you should be paid for what type of role, at what type of level, at what type of stage company. I primarily have access to that information for like technology companies and startups, but there's ways to find this information otherwise. Find that like data, come up with a clear understanding of, what is your value at similar organizations. Have a clear understanding of how your salary has moved or not moved over time. You're entitled to information to, for instance, where you fall in a salary band according to your level. Every organization, even small startups, should be able to have that. Start with a clear understanding of what your salary expectations are. Try to suss out information from your manager of like, okay, you say you can't give that to me. Help me understand where I am in the salary band. Help me understand when I should expect the next comp increase. And do it in a way that isn't like combative, but do it in a way that is collaborative, right? Like, these are the things that I've been able to drive forward. These are the things that I believe I can continue to drive forward in the future. I really want to remain at this organization. I have deep loyalty and deep passion for the mission. For me to have a sustainable future, personally, I'm really thinking a lot about my finances. And this is where I think I should be at from a salary perspective. Help me understand how can we sort of help make that gap closer or smaller. And, as part of that conversation, leverage the data that you have. More often than not, managers will really appreciate, or supervisors will really appreciate that information, because in many organizations, they don't even have that visibility. And you are, in fact, your only advocate, unless you have a very, 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 very supportive manager. Last, I think that especially this might not apply so much in nonprofit organizations, but if you get continued no's, is there a way to get creative on other dimensions of negotiation that will help you feel like you are in fact advancing? I think that negotiating, cash is short, can you negotiate on equity? If you can negotiate on equity, can you negotiate on title? Can you negotiate on scope? Can you negotiate on opportunities for access to leadership? I feel that there's a multifaceted negotiation that can be handled. But yeah, I hope that answered sort of with some sort of practical lens.
All right, that's it. Thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you so much.